Since you were a child, you hear about the Holy Spirit. But have you ever been told that there are 7 spirits before the throne of God? 7, not 1. And I'm not talking metaphors. I'm talking about something that was revealed in Scripture and kept silent for centuries. Who are these 7? And even more disturbing, where are they now? Maybe you've never heard a sermon on this. Maybe you've read Revelation 1-4 and just skimmed over it. But these 7 spirits are not a modern invention, nor some enigmatic code. They have been seen, described, named, and today they continue to operate in silence, while few dare to ask, why 7? And why they are before the throne. What you're about to discover may surprise you not because it's strange, but because it's real, and it was hidden right before your eyes. There's something hidden between the lines of the Bible that escapes the logic of traditional religion. Something that only those who sense a greater truth, hidden truth can perceive, have. You ever felt that there's something more? Something no one can explain, but that vibrates within you when you read certain passages of the Bible. Stay with me until the end, because this journey goes far beyond ordinary theology. We'll traverse the layers of sacred text, touch the veils of creation, and find clues to what was present even before let there be light. Isaiah 11 speaks of 7 spiritual manifestations. Revelation confirms their existence. But behind the scenes of history, mystics, prophets, and scribes fought to preserve this knowledge, while systems tried to erase their names. They are called eyes, flames, pure manifestations of God Himself. And some believe they walk among us. It's not just about doctrine. It's about identity, destiny, revelation, and perhaps something your spirit has already begun to remember. But if these spirits were so important that they stood before the throne, why does almost no one talk about them? And what does this have to do with you? Let's find out together. But if these spirits were so important that they stood before the throne, why does almost no one talk about them? And what does this have to do with you? Now, take a deep breath and answer me from the heart. Does this all make sense to you? Have you ever felt there was something beyond what you've always been told? So, I really want to know. Leave a comment below with what's touched you most so far. A word, a verse, a memory. It may seem small, but your voice helps keep this space alive. It's your participation that transforms this channel into something bigger, a community of seekers. And if you felt this content spoke to something deep inside you, give it a like. It may seem like just a click, but it shows YouTube that this message has value and helps spread it to others who, like you, are also awakening. And if you haven't signed up yet, do so now. Because what we're building here is a journey. A hidden thread that connects the forgotten narratives of the beginning of creation with the deepest questions of the soul. And this journey is just beginning now. Get ready. The veil is about to move once more. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. In Revelation, John describes something that almost no one dares to explore in depth. 7 spirits who stand before the throne of God, not around, not beneath, not hidden before this. Position is not just symbolic, it's strategic. It's as if they were guardians of something greater, or eternal witnesses to all that was, is, and will be. But why does almost no one talk about this? Why are pulpits silent? Why do theologians look away? That's where the forbidden question comes in. The one that bothers you. The one you've probably already felt, but never had the courage to put into words. What if there are divine manifestations that have been hidden from us? What if part of the truth about God, about creation, about the Spirit, has been deliberately left out, not for lack of faith, but for excess control? Because what's at stake here isn't just knowledge, it's spiritual freedom. It's your direct connection to the source, to the invisible that pulses behind matter, to the breath that precedes words. And the seven spirits are like mirrors of this breath, each one reflecting a forgotten face of the divine. Some scholars interpret them as attributes wisdom, understanding, counsel, fortitude, knowledge, fear, and the Spirit of the Lord. Others interpret them as conscious entities, beings that not only represent, but inhabit the higher dimensions of existence. Silent witnesses of the beginning who hold the code of Genesis within themselves. Think with me. If God is one, but manifests himself in three, Father, Son, and Spirit, why couldn't he also manifest himself in seven distinct spiritual forms? Couldn't these be the first manifestations of the Spirit in creation, before there was even flesh, time, or words? What if these seven are the eyes mentioned in Zechariah 4:10, which roam throughout the earth? What if they are watching right now, at this very moment? When you understand this, everything changes. Because this revelation isn't just theoretical light, has a real impact. It changes your mindset, transforms the way you pray, how you feel God's presence. Because perhaps what you call intuition, discernment, strength in dark days, perhaps it's the silent workings of one of these seven spirits. Have you ever considered this? And here's a detail almost no one mentions. The seven spirits also appear in Isaiah, long before John. This means they were there from the beginning, from before the Word, from before the light. Were they with God? Or were they expressions of God himself? This is the question that echoes behind the scenes of creation. And the deeper you delve, the more you realize you're not dealing with allegories, but with real layers of spiritual existence. This kind of hidden truth is not meant to be explained in a lecture. It needs to be needs to be felt in the spirit, recognized as a seed that awakens something within you. Because when you access this dimension, you're not just learning something new. You're remembering something old, something that has always been there, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. And maybe, just maybe, that moment has come now. Comment here. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to go even deeper into the subject. Revelation 1:2-4 says, "Grace and peace to you from him who is, and who was, and who is to come, and from the seven spirits who are before his throne." This is one of the most overlooked and perhaps most powerful passages in all of Scripture. Because here, right at the beginning of the Bible's most mysterious revelation, John doesn't just mention God or Jesus or the Holy Spirit. He mentions seven spirits, clearly distinct, clearly positioned before God. This is not a detail. This is the basis, and when we go back to Isaiah 11:2-2, the connection becomes even more powerful, and the Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge, and of the fear of the Lord. That's seven spiritual manifestations exactly. Not 4, not 12. 7, the number of totality, of creation, of divine rest. The curious and at the same time disturbing thing is that for centuries, these passages were treated as poetic, symbolic, or even dismissed in sermons. Why? Perhaps because this revelation changes everything. It overturns the mindset of a single, passive spirit and presents a much more complex panorama. 7 active, conscious spiritual forces operating in concert, or perhaps separately, in different dimensions of reality. When John writes Revelation, he is having visions, not theories. And what he saw was so intense, so extraordinary, that few today have the courage to interpret it without filters. But these visions don't come out of nowhere. They echo ancient prophecies, like those of Isaiah, and connect with a lineage of forgotten revelations that stretches back to the beginning of creation, and herein lies the real impact. If the 7 spirits appear at both the beginning and the end of Scripture, it means they span humanity's entire spiritual journey. They were there when the light was spoken. They are here as the end approaches. They're not supporting characters. They're invisible pillars. Have you ever stopped to think about how many decisions we make based on a fragmented understanding of spirituality? How many times have we felt something profound but lacked the language to name it? Perhaps because we were taught to see the Spirit as a single homogeneous force when, in fact, the Bible itself presents us with layers. These 7 spirits can represent 7 doors, 7 keys, 7 ways to connect with the divine in ways conventional theology has never taught us. And when you begin to understand this, a silent transformation begins. Because you realize you weren't created just to follow rules, but to discover secrets. These spiritual manifestations are, in practice, operational aspects of the Spirit of God. Each one acts in a specific way. Wisdom illuminates, understanding deciphers, counsel directs, fortitude sustains, knowledge reveals, fear balances, and the Spirit of the Lord governs. Together, they form an invisible spiritual architecture that shapes not only heaven, but the human journey itself. This understanding changes everything. The way you pray, the way you interpret signs, the way you feel the divine presence in your daily life. Because it's no longer about waiting for something external, but about realizing that these 7 are already active, circulating around us, perhaps within us, perhaps beside us. Imagine the impact of recognizing that the strength that lifts you up on a dark day could be fortitude in action, that the shiver you get during a Bible reading could be knowledge manifesting, that the doubt that paralyzes you could be the fear of the Lord trying to guide your path. This is not theory. It is spiritual insight. It's as if John, Isaiah, and other prophets left traces, fragments of a hidden truth that only reveals itself to those with eyes to see. And now, perhaps it's your turn to put these pieces together and see the whole picture. Comment here. That makes sense to me. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. For centuries, we have been taught to see the Spirit as a single, indivisible, abstract presence, most like a formless breath, a silent, hovering force. But this is only the surface. What ancient texts, not only the canonical ones, but also the hidden, the forgotten, the banished show us is that spiritual reality is far more complex. It's alive and detailed than tradition has simplified. Religious tradition, in its eagerness to indoctrinate, has often reduced the Spirit to a concept. It has stripped it of its mystery, its depth, its multiplicity. It has created a fixed mold, a format easily repeated in worship services, pulpits, and textbooks. But the prophets didn't speak of a generic spirit. They spoke of manifestations, faces, spiritual dimensions that act for specific purposes, like perfect cogs in a plan that existed before time. And when you begin to deconstruct this rigid model, you've been taught something is freed within you. Because true spirituality isn't a closed system. It's a living journey. It pulses, breathes, and reveals itself in stages. And the 7 spirits of God are like stages of this revelation, each one opening a door that the previous one only hinted at. Imagine for a moment, what if what you felt as intuition was wisdom acting silently? What if that certainty that came at just the right moment was advice manifesting itself? What if the courage that appeared when everything seemed to be falling apart was the fortitude sustaining you without you even knowing it? These aren't just pretty ideas, they're spiritual realities operating behind the veil of the visible. This realization changes your mindset because it takes you out of the role of passive spectator and invites you into a position of active recognition. You stop just praying for something and start discerning who is answering you. Which of these 7 is operating at that moment in that decision? In that dream, there is profound power in recognizing Spirit not as an indivisible volume, but as a multifaceted divine intelligence, because this also says something about you, about your soul. About your purpose, if we were made in the image of God, and God has multiple spiritual manifestations, then you also carry fragments of these 7 within you, in different proportions, at different times in your life. That's why there are phases when all you feel is fear, and at others, wisdom shines through. It's not chance, it's orchestration. And here's something even more profound. Each of these 7 spirits has a strategic function in the divine plan. They are not random forces. They are structures of construction, repair, instruction, and spiritual transition. They build realities, align destinies, and rescue forgotten purposes. And all of this happens in the invisible, while the world remains distracted. When Isaiah spoke of them, he was describing what would rest upon the Messiah. In other words, Christ himself bore these 7. This speaks volumes about the ideal spiritual standard. It's not just being filled with faith, it's being aligned with each of these manifestations. And here comes a silent revelation, one that few realize. Every great spiritual transformation in history happened when someone accessed more than one of these aspects simultaneously. Moses, Elijah, Daniel, John, all of them at some point were overcome by wisdom, strength, and fear at the same time. This is no coincidence. It's a hidden pattern. You don't have to be perfect to access this, but you do need to be awake. Because the Spirit never stopped speaking, just stopped being heard as a multiple voice. And perhaps this is one of the great spiritual cures of our time, restoring listening. Relearning to recognize the multiple languages of the divine. It's not about understanding with your mind. It's about remembering with your spirit, because all of this is already within you. And now, it's awakening. Write it down. That makes sense to me. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because when we talk about the 7 spirits of God, we're not just describing beautiful spiritual qualities or neatly organized theological aspects. We're touching on something much older, denser, and more mysterious. Something that moves behind the scenes of creation and silently accompanies each cycle of humanity. These 7 are not just symbols. They are presences, intelligences, living entities that emanate directly from the heart of the divine. Prophetic, language calls them eyes, not in the physical sense, but as consciousnesses that see beyond time and matter. 7 eyes that roam the earth. 7 witnesses that never sleep. 7 expressions of the divine mind, each with a specific function in the balance of existence. Wisdom is not just the ability to understand. It is a spiritual force that illuminates the invisible. When it operates, you feel clarity amidst chaos. It's as if everything takes shape within you before it even happens. Wisdom is an entity that not only teaches, it guides without needing to speak. Counsel is the spirit that whispers directions. It acts when you're faced with decisions that seem the same on the outside, but very different on the inside. It doesn't shout, it inclines, it aligns. It's that impulse you almost ignore, but when followed, reveals the right path with almost supernatural precision. Understanding is more than reasoning. It is the bridge between what is revealed and what is understood. It connects words to essence. It transforms information into revelation. When understanding manifests itself, even the oldest texts seem to leap from the page with new life. Fortitude is the presence that sustains without being seen. It's that silent force that keeps you standing when everything around you tells you it's too late. It doesn't appear with noise, it appears with resistance. When you feel like you don't know how you're still standing, it's because fortitude has held you up. Knowledge goes beyond knowing, it reveals. It exposes the hidden, reveals intentions, shows what lies behind appearances. When this spirit moves, you begin to see connections no one else sees. You begin to connect the dots between past, present, and even what is yet to come. And the fear of the Lord, ... That is the spirit that puts everything in its place. It is not fear. It is a deep awareness of the divine presence. It is a reverence that comes not from without, but from within. It is the feeling of standing before something so pure, so immense, that all pride dissolves. True fear does not drive away. It brings us closer with humility. Finally, there is the Spirit of the Lord Himself, who unites, governs, and overrides all the others. It is from Him that the other seven emanate, like rays of a single light. He is the center, the throne, the original breath. And together, these seven form an invisible but operative spiritual body, moving from the first seconds of creation until. Now, what does this change? It changes everything, because you stop seeing spirituality as something abstract or distant, and start recognizing concrete movements. Your own journey begins to make more sense. You begin to understand that you are not alone when you intuit, when you resist, when you feel guided. There is an intelligence behind these experiences, and it has a name, it has form, it has a mission. The seven spirits of God are active now. In this time, some believe they are manifesting themselves more strongly these days because the cycle is closing, because creation is returning to its point of origin, and each of them is taking its place, doing its work, preparing the hearts that can hear. That's why all of this touches you so deeply, because there's a part of you that recognizes this truth, even if you've never heard it in these words. Truth has this power. It awakens what was dormant. Comment here. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because when the seven spirits appear in the pages of the Bible, it's already something grand. But when we realize that this same idea permeates forgotten texts, books that were excluded, banned, or simply ignored by religious tradition, then everything gains a new layer. A layer that reveals what was left out, not by chance, but by choice. And almost always, when something is removed from the official narrative, it's because it carries a hidden truth that disturbs those who prefer control over mystery. In the texts of Enoch, for example, one of the most mysterious and at the same time most respected books by ancient scholars, we find direct references to spiritual beings who inhabit the celestial realms, serving as observers, sentinels, and silent witnesses too. What happens on earth? They are described as angels of the presence, but also as intelligences that maintain the balance between what is above and what is below. In Enoch chapter 20, 7 archangels are named, each with a specific function: Raphael, Raguel, Michael, Sariel, Uriel, Ramiel, and Gabriel. The connection with the seven spirits is not explicit, but it is symbolic and powerful. Each represents a spiritual force, a divine function, an active expression of a higher purpose. The structural similarity raises the hypothesis that the concept of the seven spirits existed long before it was mentioned in Revelation, just in a different guise, using different language. In Gnostic writings, especially those found at Nag Hammadi, there are passages that speak of eons beings that emanate directly from the divine source, each carrying a characteristic of the whole. And among these eons, there are also seven principal ones. Once again, the pattern repeats itself: seven manifestations, seven faces of the invisible, seven forces that structure the spiritual even before matter is formed. These texts do not emerge by coincidence. They come from parallel traditions that preserved secrets through symbols and layers. What unites them is not formal theology, but mystical experience. Because these ancients knew something that many today have forgotten. That truth is not confined to a single book, but scattered like seeds waiting for the right time to germinate. And if the seven spirits or the seven eyes of God are described in different cultures, traditions, and texts, this points to a much broader truth. A truth that transcends the boundaries of institutionalized religion and touches the most intimate part of the human spiritual journey. a truth that unites rather than separates, that reveals rather than hides. The 7 eyes of God roam the earth. As Zechariah says, but what are they seeking? Why are they here now, in such a chaotic, noisy, and divided time? Do they seek the hearts that can still hear? The souls that still vibrate with the sacred? Or are they preparing something, observing the signs, waiting for the right moment to act? This question, though seemingly abstract, has a direct impact on our mindset. It invites us to leave our passive religious stance and embark on an active journey of perception, of spiritual listening, of attunement to that which cannot be taught in words, but which can be recognized by those who still have eyes to see. This is one of the greatest transformations possible, realizing that divine intelligences are operating, silently, yet deeply attentively, and that perhaps, at this very moment, one of these presences is by your side, watching you, protecting you, guiding you even if you're not fully aware of it. True spirituality doesn't happen in the temple, on the altar, or in the vestments. It happens the moment you accept that there's something greater moving within you, around you, and that all of this is connected to a greater plan that hasn't been fully revealed, but that has left clues. Clues in forbidden books, in ancient dreams, in forgotten prophecies. And if the 7 spirits of God are the eyes of the Creator, then there every glance upon the earth is a search, a probing, a preparation. It's not just about watching, but about choosing, of activating, of gathering the awakened. Comment here. That makes sense to me. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because once we understand who the 7 spirits are, the inevitable question is, where are they now? Do they remain before the throne, as the scriptures suggest? Or do they descend to earth at certain times to directly influence the human journey? Mystical tradition asserts that these 7 never left their position before the eternal. They remain there, surrounding the throne, like flaming torches, like watchful eyes, like invisible pillars of creation. But there is also an ancient current that says something even more intriguing, that at specific times in history, times of transition, of chaos, of reordering, they manifest themselves among us, not in human form, not as physical figures, but as internal movements, profound awakenings, sensations that defy all logic. Has it ever happened to you? It's that moment when something inside you simply ... ignites. There's no rational explanation. It didn't come from outside, but suddenly, you know you need to change. You know the time has come. You know something greater is calling. Maybe, just maybe, that call didn't come from your mind. Maybe it came from one of them. There is a spiritual theory that states, the closer the end approaches, the more the 7 eyes of God intensify their vigil. They roam the earth not only to observe, but to select, identify, activate, and every person who awakens to this kind of content, every soul who senses there is something hidden waiting to be discovered, is being in some way touched by this silent presence. This realization has a profound impact, because it removes us from the position of spectators of spirituality and places us as active participants in what is unfolding. We begin to realize that there is a sacred intelligence coordinating every awakening, every synchronicity, every encounter with truth. It's not a matter of chance. It's about alignment. The 7 spirits of God do not operate as distant mystical figures, but as living layers of a divine presence that communicates through vibration, through signs, through experiences that repeat themselves until you listen. They do not speak aloud, but the soul understands, and when it understands, something moves, something that never returns to the way it was. This is the essence of the call, and perhaps that's what's happening right now, at this very moment. As you listen to these words and feel something echoing within you, because sometimes the spiritual call doesn't come with trumpets. It comes with silence, with that sweet discomfort of knowing that life is not just what meets the eye, with that subtle certainty that there's another layer, and it's about to be accessed. There are accounts from ancient mystics across cultures that speak of presences that haunt the world during moments of collapse and rebirth. Presences that do not interfere directly, but observe, wait, and touch those who are ready. In some traditions, these presences are called watchers. In others, emanators. But in all, their function is the same: to preserve the plane, awaken those connected, and protect the divine flow. And when the Bible speaks of the 7 spirits before the throne, it may be referring to precisely this: pure intelligences that remain in position, but when necessary, lean forward. They project themselves. They touch the earth, not physically, but with real spiritual impact. And this changes everything. Because if they are among you 7, if invisible, what does this mean about the times in which we live? It means we are at a turning point of revelation, of harvest. A time when old codes are being deciphered, when prophecies are given new life, when the Spirit blows in unexpected ways, and those who listen are the first to move. Can you feel it? Can you sense that this isn't just a conversation about ancient theology, but about something unfolding right now, within you, around you, in the invisible fabric of reality? Because the feeling many have of being guided, watched, remembered may not be an illusion. It may be rescue. It may be a sign. Comment here: I'm on this journey too. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because if everything that's been said so far has already provoked an inner transformation in youth, that feeling that you're beginning to see behind the veil, then prepare yourself, because there's something even more hidden. A truth that has never been written openly, but which is hidden between the lines of almost every sacred text. A mystery that predates even the 7 spirits. And the question that echoes is, why have they been there before the throne since the beginning? The answer may be linked not only to their spiritual function, but to what they guard, because there is something they protect. Something that human eyes cannot yet fully see. Something that belongs to the time before time, to the sound before sound, to the primordial vibration. The 7 spirits are like sentinels of an even deeper origin. And if this seems abstract, it is because we are still learning to see with the eyes of the Spirit, not just with the mind. The oldest traditions speak of layers in creation, of divine orders that predate even angels, thrones, and cherubim. They speak of entities so high they cannot even be named. And some scholars have dared to suggest that the 7 are the first echoes of this hidden layer, that they were not born with the world but were there when the first light broke through the abyss. That's why they are mentioned in such profound revelations as Revelation and Isaiah. Because they belong to an order that cannot be touched by doctrine, only by revelation. They are like guardians of a hidden code, which is only accessed when the Spirit awakens to truths greater than words can contain. And this code, according to some mystical lines, speaks not only of powers, but of origin. Contains clues about who you are, where you came from, why you are here. Because if these 7 guard the entrance to the throne, perhaps they also guard the memory of who you were before you forgot. And if this memory begins to awaken within you now, don't ignore it. Because perhaps this is what the 7 were looking for as they roamed the earth with their fiery eyes. Not the religious, not the perfect, but the awakened. What if I told you that these 7 spirits are just the first guardians of a much greater secret? Comment here. That makes sense to me. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you recognized this message. Not as a distant theory, but as a spiritual memory being awakened. And that's why this space exists, so we can continue accessing these hidden truths together, calmly, deeply and without rushing to finish what's just beginning. If this content truly touched you, if any part of it resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, because there's much more to come. Each video is a new piece, and this journey only makes sense with those who walk along. Leave it here in the comments. I'm with you until the end. Just so I know that you felt this calling too, that this conversation found a home in their dot. And if this video sparked something in you, click the like button. It's just a small gesture, but it helps this message reach those who also need it. There's a video here that complements this topic. Click and follow me there. The next revelation is already waiting.